That's my wonderful animal magic theme music that Jay puts on for me. This is Ella the Pearl Monroe, sitting in for Ken Kale until 5 o'clock today here on Kale and Company on WTPL 1077FM.com. And we were just talking with...
WTPLFM.com.
I do that so Jay, make sure Jay's listening. WTPLFM.com. You can live stream Kale and Company. And he does listen very carefully, thankfully for me and for all you listeners. And you're always welcome to join our conversation. Our dial-in number here is 866-823-1077. Join the conversation anytime. We were just having a great talk with author Tony Tremblay, and he has a collection of short stories called The Seeds of Nightmares, and you can find him on YouTube under his show Taco Society Presents. You can put him in any search engine and you'll come up with all of the material that he has for sale and to be read. And his last name is spelled Tremblay, Tony Tremblay. So check him out online. And we are going to shift gears very quickly to another local author that I also met at the Gale Library in Auburn, and that is Steve Priest. Is that how you say it correctly? Steve Priest. He has a whole past in the academic world and the technology world, but we are going to focus on his persona known as Outdoor Steve. That's the guy I want to talk to today. So welcome, Steve, to Kale and Company.
Thank you very much, Bill. It's my honor to be here. My pleasure.
And he looks like he enjoys the outdoors. He's got a little bit of a tan. He's ready to climb Mount Washington. He looks like he's an outdoor kind of guy. And I met him at an author's event, and he very kindly gave and signed for me copies of his 2 books, Outdoor Play for Fun in the 4 Seasons. And there's volumes 1 and 2. So why don't you tell me, I'll call you Steve instead of Outdoor Steve. What is, how did you get to be Outdoor Steve? What is your own personal story about how you got off the couch and got outside?
Well, I didn't really start out as an outdoor enthusiast. After high school, I did very little exercise. I went to college, I went into the Army, I went to graduate school, and I never really did a lot of exercise. And when I started my first job in the afternoon, one afternoon, they decided to have a pickup basketball game. And I played, and I tore my Achilles tendon.
Ooh, okay.
And it sounds like a bad thing, but it turned out to be the best thing in the world that could ever happen to me. So the tendon went into a cast for 8 weeks, and at the end of 8 weeks, I came out of it, and I fell, and I re-injured my tendon. Ooh. And so for about a year, I limped around, and I did no exercise. I was a couch potato. And then one day, I decided I had to get off the couch. So I went down cellar and pulled out my old Army combat boots.
I read that in your bio. It was like, how do you run in a combat boot?
Well, the reason I took the combat boot because the ankle was sore.
Oh, and it laces up.
And it laces up. It laces up. So I went out and I ran the distance between 2 telephone poles, and then I walked home. The next day, after work, I went out and I ran the distance between 4 telephone poles, and I walked home. And I did that for about 6 weeks, and at the end of 6 weeks, I was able to run 1 mile without stopping.
Falling down.
And the ankle was sore, but that was the way it was. And then I started to run. Just I ran 1 mile. That was it. And then one day after a year, I saw an ad in the paper for a local road race, 3 miles, and I decided, why don't I give it a try? So I trained for that, and as part of that, I met a friend of mine named John. Actually, we wasn't a friend, but he came up after the race and said, come to find out, he lived at the end of my street. And do I want to run together with John? And I said, yeah. So we ran together. And then one a day he said, why don't we go hiking up in the White Mountains? And he'll bring his son, Ryan, and my son, Tim. So we went up in the White Mountains, and that's what's got me outside of the running world, although I continue running, and I've been running now for over 40 years because I believe the running sets you up for all of the outdoor adventures that one can do.
Right. That idea of stamina and confidence,
right?
All of that. Well, that's an inspirational story. I know when I read it, I thought, well, I can walk to or run to the next telephone pole and walk back. I could do that. So I was kind of inspired. And one of the, these books that you have are chock-a-block full of information. And I'm hoping we'll just scratch the surface in the time you're here. But one thing that is a theme throughout all of your work is never say, I wish I had. Why did you put that as like, I never want to say, I wish I had swum across, say, Winnipesaukee Lake? I mean, why did you pick that?
Because I would do a lot of these canoe trips and kayak trips. I'd always go with my son Tim and my son Sean, and my wife and I do all these things. And then other friends, we do all this outdoor stuff. Mm-hmm. And I would invite friends to go. Do you want to go up to the Allegheny to Maine and take a 10-day wilderness trip? Well, canoe and kayak. And they would say, well, I have to stay home to mow the lawn. So I'd go on these trips, and then I'd come back, and I'd have these videos and pictures and all these tales to tell. And they said to me, I wish I had gone with you. And I would hear that over and over and over again. Yeah. And so the actual never say I wish I had came from Henry David Thoreau Walden. Thoreau, being an outdoors enthusiast, people asked him one day why he went into the wilderness and did canoeing and kayaking. And he said, because when it comes time for me to die, I never want to say I had not lived. In other words, he got his strength from the wilderness, from being outside. So I sort of took that, and my very first book was called Outdoor Enthusiasts with the subtitle, Never Say I Wish I Had. So that's where that came from. Okay. And I've used that all the time, and I have people that send me emails or people I see that call me and say, Steve, I was going to do something and I hesitated, and then I thought of you and saying, never say I wish I had.
Well, that we all need to have something that we can stick in our brain that kicks in when we decide to maybe not take a risk or not get up off that couch, And now I'm on your website, which has so much color to it, lots of photographs and information. But you also are available as a motivational speaker.
Yes.
And the best way for people to contact you is just through your website?
That is correct. And on the website is my email address and the outdoorsteve.com. Okay. Outdoorsteve.com. And they can also get to my blog. If you notice in the upper right, it says blog. Yeah. And that's where all my adventures are there. Okay. And what I've been doing now, this is the 5th outdoor book that I've written. When I get about a year's worth of blogs, which is about 300 pages in the books, then I enhance the blogs and can come out with another book. Okay, because I know it's all these two that I have, the Outdoor Play for Fun, 4 Seasons, there's photographs, there's QCR codes, there's things do and don't do. There's websites to refer to. It's like an encyclopedia of what to do in New Hampshire outside. Right. But you also talk about doing it safely and learning how to, you don't just go outside and climb Mount Washington when you haven't moved for 15 years. Right. You have a lot in there about acting safely and preparing slowly. Or insensibly, I guess I want to say. But before we get to that, there's got to be some kind of defining, is there like a story or some kind of like small chunk out of your book that would tell us why you feel so impelled to do this, or what changed your way of thinking about, this works if people will just give it a try to get out and get outside and move? Right, sure. I have a place. Again, the mission that I have is to motivate and encourage families and individuals to make the outdoors a key component of their daily life. And to illustrate one happening that happened to me, which relates, and I try to practice what I
Sure.
preach here, even though I am a priest, I also practice it. Okay. In one part of the book, there's a section called A Family Revelation. And this came about because my son Tim and I were hiking in the White Mountains one day. We went way above tree line, and we had an incident. And this brief excerpt comes from that.
Okay.
My outdoor enthusiasm carried forth to my family as we began to participate together in outdoor fun and exercise. My wife and I regularly walk and run together. A summer night can find us kayaking or canoeing on the lakes of New Hampshire. Let me relate a father-son revelation that occurred while hiking with my son Timothy when he was a teenager. Hiking in the mountains requires reliance upon your partner that breaks down parent-child barriers that develop from the routine of daily life. At home, the parent sets the example and provides the child with an opportunity to learn. This pattern must be adjusted in the wilderness. Tim and I lumbered along the Appalachian Trail, planning to spend the night at the Metzpa Spring Hut, one of the 8 white mountain huts maintained by the New Hampshire chapter of the Appalachian Mountain Club. Just as we reached the peak of Mount Franklin, the weather quickly changed, and it began to rain. The rain became heavy. The sky grew darker, and suddenly we were engulfed in a torrent of rain with roaring thunder and crackling lightning. It was
Sounds like Tony Tremblay. Okay. Yeah.
It was only 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and yet it was nearly pitch dark. The top of Mount Franklin is entirely ledge and rock, and we knew immediately we were in a dangerous position. I feel that this angry and violent deluge would overcome us, and we might not survive this encounter. I suddenly knew before Tim or I died, and it could have happened at any moment.
Yeah.
I wanted Tim to know how much a part of me he was. I had an unbelievable urge to hug Tim, kiss him, and tell him how much I loved and admired him, and so I did. It was a moment I still remember today, hugging my teenage son with all my strength and telling him how much he meant to me. Tim responded with the same embracing closeness and finality that I did. I could feel his strength and our oneness as we embraced for what could be the last time. Then, just as suddenly as the storm had come, it was gone. The sun came out of it as if to say, "Together you have seen the light and felt your courage and unity." We were wet and shivering, but thankfully we were out with injury. We continued our journey. Tim and I experienced a bonding on that hike we still discuss today. We depended upon each other in a death-defying situation. I saw that he is caring, self-reliant, and level-headed under pressure. He has a thirst to learn. I have come to recognize these qualities and more as we have shared the joys, challenging, and revelations provided by hiking trips along the Appalachian Trail and many other outdoor play adventures. If the facts be known, the awakening and growth in maturity was solely mine. As you can see, I get rather emotional when I read this about him, you know?
Yes. I mean, and that I hope many people could replicate that experience just by being out with their families away from the distraction. Sometimes you're in situations where you reevaluate how you see your children and how they see you.
Correct.
And maybe a parent can really see their children as grown people or they're matured from where they thought they were, but they don't see it in every day. They don't notice it.
Right, right. And so, and again, trying to motivate individuals and families. In this outdoors, it's really a lifestyle for the long haul.
Well, you think it kind of has to be a commitment to change how you use your time and evaluate where you put the priority of your time? Is it indoors doing stuff, or is it outdoors with your family and keeping healthy and I want to say enriched, I would say spiritually, for those who believe that? There
is spiritually, and it's interesting when I run and I'm running along, a lot of times I have a problem and I'm thinking about it, and just by being by myself sometimes, running, I can solve it. Or if I'm running with somebody, like my son, Sean, my other son, I ran with him, and we would talk about things. And it's amazing how you can share stuff when you're alone with your family or with friends.
And do you think just like being out of your normal environment makes it safer somehow for people to talk about stuff? If they're, say, you're sitting in a forest just listening quietly to the animals around you or the trees rustling, you think, okay, maybe this is a safe place to talk about a difficult topic, or just to say, I love you, I respect you, because it's not your normal, no one else can hear you, maybe say it. Right. No one's going to watch you and judge you. It just seems, I don't know, it seems that you're safer outdoors than indoors. That's the thinking I have.
Well, it's safe. That's a very interesting thing, because I've had other things happen to me that is safe because of the exercise programs. A lot of times when I was a healthcare professional out there as an administrator, I'd go to conferences. People would stay in the hospitality suites all night. Exactly. Well, I had to get up and run in the morning because of my lifestyle. It was a commitment to me. And so I would leave earlier. So I think it made me healthier in both physically and mentally.
And did you figure that when you were in a different city or a different town, it was exciting because you're going to go out for a nice early morning run, and the city's just waking up, and you see new people and new things, and that stimulates your imagination?
Oh, you meet a lot of very nice people. I was up to the Great North Woods in the northern part of New Hampshire a couple of years ago. I was kayaking, and I had just gotten off the 3rd Connecticut Lake, and there was a fellow there trying to put his canoe up on his car, and he couldn't do it by himself. So I just went over and asked him if he wanted to help. And he said yes, and so we chatted like 2 minutes. And he said he was an author, and I said I was an author. We exchanged business cards. Well, we hadn't seen each other in 10 years, and a week ago, my wife and I called him up because we were down where he lives, and he invited us over his home. So we got to meet new people like that.
Oh my God! Now, have you been in maybe situations where you needed help and you knew that someone coming along the trail was like-minded, like it's a community, and you know that a stranger on the trail will help you if you're in danger,
right?
Or in need of something? It's like a camaraderie.
There is a camaraderie. No. There is a fraternity or a sorority, whatever you want to call it, of people that are in the outdoors. Because you have common interest.
Well, that's something, and you rely when you're outside, like you with your son. You do rely on each other,
right?
Because no one can live outside by themselves,
right?
I read or watched a story about a man who was blind and hiked the entire Appalachian Trail, and he had to rely on strangers and that sense of camaraderie. And when we get back, we're going to take a quick break, but I hope you'll stay with us. And when we come back, maybe you can share with us some of your favorite spots in New Hampshire. We've been talking to Steve Priest. He's also known as Outdoor Steve, and he's the author of a lot of material about being outdoors in our great state of New Hampshire. And of course, you can find him at outdoorsteve.com. So stay with us, and we'll continue our conversation here on The Pulse. And while we're thinking of outdoors, Outdoor Steve, also known as Steve Priest legally, Steve Priest, but Outdoor Steve, we've been talking about his extensive knowledge of being outdoors and making it a lifestyle or a personal lifestyle. And he shared with us some of his own motivations and experiences that have brought his family closer together, and all of those tree huggy soft things that maybe we need more of a little bit, Steve, I think. But tell us about, like, if I had to name me your top 3 places to go in New Hampshire.
Wow, that's a tough because there's so many
Yeah.
beautiful
Or
places
I'll give you
to go.
5. I'll give you
Okay.
5 in 10 minutes.
Okay, one of them is up to the Great North Woods area. That's up in Pittsburgh, New Hampshire.
Oh, it's like 3 hours from here?
3 hours from
Oy.
here at least, and it's right on the Canadian border. It's a beautiful place to go. I've camped on the Lake Francis, and if you're interested in some of the history up in that area, it's a beautiful place. There's 4 lakes up there, the big lakes that they call. There's one is the first Connecticut, second Connecticut, third
Oh,
Connecticut, and fourth Connecticut.
Oh, now whose imagination was
I
that?
have no idea.
Some map maker just did 1, 2, 3, 4.
One of the reasons I went up there, and my wife got a kick out of this, because I wanted to straddle the Connecticut River. And as
Straddle it. Okay.
you know, Connecticut River is a border between New Hampshire and Vermont.
Yeah.
And it actually flows about 420 miles and ends up down on the Long Island Sound. It begins, and the headwaters is up on the Canadian border in a little small, they call it the 4th Connecticut Lake, but it's like 70 acres. It's very, very small.
But still wider than your legs.
It's like, no, there's a little stream that comes out of the Connecticut Lake, and that's a path, and you can put 1 foot on one side and 1 on the other and say that you have straddled the Connecticut Lake. So that's a great place to go. And to paddle the 4th Connecticut feeds the 3rd Connecticut Lake, and we've paddled along that. And we did this all from staying in the Lake Francis campground and then doing day trips to these different lakes. And it's a great place if you want to see the moose. They have.
I was going to say, moose. Tell me moose.
Moose Alley. And I've got some great pictures. I think I told you that I was a volunteer producer for Bedford Community TV. And so I take a lot of videos, and some of the books, not some of the books, all of the books have videos in them. And if you have the e-book, version of Outdoor Play, Fun for 4 Seasons, Volume 1 and Volume 2, there's a section there on the Great North Woods and on moose. And if you click on one of those videos, you'll see about 3 minutes worth of the moose up in the Great North Woods area.
Wow, so it's amazing what you can add to an ebook.
Oh, it is.
Those hyperlinks is to a whole nother part of experiencing what you're reading.
It's a whole new world. You can read something, and then you say, the moose. So he's talking about moose, and he has pictures of moose, and all of a sudden you see the link, and you can click there, and you can see the moose, and my friends talking about the moose and all that stuff.
Oh, my gosh. So make a plug for Community Access Television. Check out your local Community Access TV. They've got a lot to offer. But, okay, that's the Great North Woods. What's maybe, like I've been, I don't know, to Bartlett. I've been all over the state, but I'm not sure I pay attention to what's around me to get out and move.
Well, there is one area that you could visit, and that's the Squam Lake Science Center. They have paths that you can wander through. And what's so fascinating about that, you can see animals in their natural habitat.
And that's near Holderness?
Yes, it's in Holderness. You can see bears, you can see eagles. And now these are not bears that are in a cage. These are bears that's in a 2-acre area. And they have fences around with platforms that you can walk around and see the black bear. They have eagles.
Wow.
All of these animals that you see there, they have otters, and they even have mountain lions, believe it or not. And there's an
Native?
Well, that is
Or
up for
nothing
the
included.
discussion.
Okay. They're living in New Hampshire. I guess they qualify.
Right. But you can...
They can vote, maybe. I don't know.
all the animals there, they were injured of some sort. So
Okay.
they were not captured per se. They were injured, and they were in a rehabilitation process, but they're put back into a natural environment type of enclosure. So that's a great place you can bring your family and children and kids and for everybody. And of course, you get the Mount Washington area. If you've ever, I've hiked up to Tuckerman's Ravine Trail. I've hiked up there with my 2 sons and my grandchildren and my wife and my friend Dee and John and Dick and
Now
a lot
that
of friends.
sounds like when I think of Tuckerman's Ravine, you drive and you see it, it's like that might not be that would be more like a moderate experienced person.
Yes, it would be.
So if
Yes,
you
it
had
would
someone
be.
like me who I walk around 20 minutes around my neighborhood and I can walk up a kind of a steep hill. But what would be the thing for someone just like taking your advice and wanting to get out slowly if they lived in Concord or like an hour or so from Concord?
Okay.
Yeah.
There are a lot of small trails like up in the Lake Sunapee area.
Okay.
There are trails in the Lake Sunapee area that you can hike up. And I've done that many times, and it's fun. You can go up there with your children and just hike up there. Just pull into the main parking lot, and you'll see the signs for the hiking trails.
Now, do I need all these like popcorn in my brain? Because we've talked to the Forest Society, we've had Fish and Game, and I never remember to ask if say you're driving down around Lake Sunapee and you see a trailhead, do you need any kind of special passes to walk on these state park trails, or do you have to pay somewhere when you get somewhere else? What's the access for these trails?
Yes, you have to. They just started this a few years ago. It's a hike safety pass.
Yes.
And it tells you the different things to do about clothing you're supposed to have and whatever, but it keeps you informed. And if you get it protects you too. So if you have this certificate or this badge, and there's you get injured and you have to be rescued,
Right.
then there's no charge to you.
Right. Especially
If you
it's
do something
nuisance.
foolish, like hike up start hiking up in the Mount Washington area with
No gear.
sneakers on,
Right.
or no gear and shorts, and it's in the middle of winter, and you have a problem, you might have to pay for it. So it's a safety thing that they're trying to.
But as far as like safety goes, and I agree, the hike safe is a great idea. But I mean, it's like there's no prohibition against going on any national or state maintained trails that you see as you're driving down the backwoods in New Hampshire and you see all these trailheads.
Right.
I mean, those are free and accessible to the public.
They are, and they're great. They are wonderful, and even some of the state parks, some of them charge. But if you're been in the military, there is no charge. So all the veterans in the state, New Hampshire is a great state for. They serve all the veterans that have served. There's no charge to going in the state parks.
Wow.
And if you're over 65, there are some other these state parks that they do not charge.
So there's a lot, like from what I'm getting from you then, there's a lot of parks that they're accessible, they're affordable or free, and they're for, you don't have to be a hiker, you don't have to be 40 years climbing up Mount Washington in order to navigate these paths. So there's no reason to say I wish I had.
That's exactly right.
There's no reason.
Most of the time, you look outside your window. Within a mile, I bet you could find places to go and hike within your own area and to walk.
Yeah.
You don't have to take a strenuous hike, but just to get out, take that first step, take those first 2 telephone poles, and walk to the next day. It's the consistency of it, and not that you do it 6 or 7 days a week, but you do it 5 days a week, or you do it every other day. But you have to get out there so that you will never have to say, I wish I had.
And you don't need a lot of gear, just some decent shoes and good socks. Right. I mean, and maybe a hat.
And a hat because of the sun and the rain, like when you're in a canoe or a kayak,
Definitely a hat. And I mean, I'm looking at this list you made of some of your favorite places, and it's like, I want to go there. And some are span the 3 states, like the Appalachian Trail spans the 3 states. And you've got one here from Minnesota.
Yes.
What's up with Minnesota?
Oh, fantastic place called the Boundary Waters. The Boundary Waters is the borderline between Ontario and Minnesota. They call it the Boundary Waters.
Okay.
And there's over 2 million acres of wilderness there.
Wow.
And they do not allow motorboats. It's canoeing and kayaking. And my son Tim and my good friend Dun D and his son Paul, the four of us went out and we stayed there for a week paddling and camping in the wilderness. In a beautiful area.
You know, my first thought, because I have friends from Minnesota, what's your best mosquito repellent? Because that's all I can think of is mosquitoes. In the few minutes we have left, I'm like, what's going to keep me from losing all of my blood from mosquitoes when I'm out there enjoying the outdoors?
Well, if you do like what we did, we went in September.
And brilliant. I was I could slather myself in bear grease. Okay.
We know what black fly season is like here in New Hampshire.
Okay. So. And I guess ticks, again, ticks are just common sense.
Ticks, common sense, but you have to check yourself. So when you go to take a shower, check you have these ticks. I mean, I have had ticks.
Yeah.
And so you really have to watch yourself for ticks.
Okay.
If you wear light clothing, long sleeves, have your pants come down to your shoes, protect yourself along those ways.
And you look pretty healthy. Haven't
I'm
had
very
any
fortunate.
mishaps?
No. And the thing I'm getting ready to do this Saturday, I'm rowing in the Proudy.
Proudy?
The Proudy is a cancer fundraising event up in Hanover. And it sort of goes back to never say I wish I had.
Yeah.
I try to do things I've never done before because I never want to say I wish I had. And rowing is a situation that I've always wanted to try in the Olympics. You know, these eight people in a boat with a coxswain.
Yeah.
There was a sign in George's Mills in Sunapee that said the Lake Sunapee Rowing Club was offering rowing lessons. So last summer, I signed up for them because I never did the rowing.
Yeah.
And they had great instructors. Brenda was the main coach, and she was just fantastic and very professional and very knowledgeable. And I rowed in the single scull, the double scull, the quad, which is 4 rowers in the scull.
Okay.
And the 8+ coxswain, which is what they call a sweep. And when you're in the scull, you have 2 oars. When you're in the sweep with the 8, in our situation, we had 1 oar each with 8 people.
Okay, so you have to really work in unison.
Right, yeah.
What team building that is, my gosh.
It was great. Very nice people. And so this spring, people were talking about the Proudy, which is up in Hanover, a cancer fundraiser. They've been doing it since 1982.
Wow. So I'm inspired just sitting here. I'm tired talking to you, but I think rowing would be the most meditative process to just get in a boat and row, and that's all you focus on.
It's got your legs. It uses your legs. It uses your tummy. It uses the shoulder. It uses your neck as you turn around and look.
Yeah. I might be inspired. I might go from horse racing to rowing. This could work out well.
If you go to one of the chapters in the outdoor play Fun for 4 Seasons Volume 2, you'll see there's a chapter on rowing from the perspective of a novice. And it's my experience of rowing with the Lake Sunapee Rowing Club this past summer.
Well, that's some more reading for me to do, which will be helpful. I so enjoy doing this show because I get to meet the most interesting people and learn something all the time that makes my day a little bit brighter. I want to thank Steve Priest, otherwise known as Outdoor Steve, for joining me on this show. Please check out his website, outdoorsteve.com, and believe me, he's very savvy, so if he's out there doing something, you will see it on the website. So again, thank you, Steve, for your time.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure.
We're going to take a quick break. This is Ellen Monroe sitting in for Ken Kale on 107.